Okay, so welcome to another deep dive.
Hmm.
Today we are going to be looking at some recently declassified CIA documents that
Okay.
are connected to the Warren Commission's investigation
Right.
into President John F. Kennedy's assassination.
Huge topic.
What's really interesting here is that these documents reveal some new stuff
Oh, wow.
about potential anonymous phone calls
Interesting.
to the U.S. Embassy in Canberra, Australia around the time of the assassination.
Wow. So this is primary source material, right?
Exactly.
Straight from the CIA archives, specifically from November 1968.
Yep.
These are memoranda and what are called writing slips,
Right.
which give us an interesting glimpse into the agency's internal workings
Yeah.
and their interest in this aspect of the Warren Commission's findings, even a few years after the
Yeah.
report was issued.
Exactly. So for the listener, our mission today is to try to piece together
Okay.
what these documents tell us about the CIA's focus on Australian intelligence
Okay.
relating to the JFK assassination. And most importantly, these mysterious anonymous calls.
I love a good mystery.
Think of it as like uncovering this little piece of thread
Uh-huh.
in this big historical tapestry.
I like that analogy.
So let's start with this first document.
Okay.
It's called a routing and record sheet,
Okay.
and it's dated November 20, 1968.
All right.
Now, a routing and record sheet is basically an internal tracking document
Okay.
that shows where a piece of correspondence originated
Okay.
and where it was sent within the agency.
Makes sense.
This one is from the chief of the Far East Division.
Okay, so right away what jumps out to me is that the subject of this routing slip
Yeah.
is a letter that's addressed to the Director of Central Intelligence himself.
Wow.
And it's from Sir Charles Spry, who is the head of the Australian Security Intelligence Organization,
Okay.
or ASIO.
So basically right off the bat, we see high-level communication between the U.S. and Australia about this.
Exactly. From the get-go, we know this is serious business.
Right. And this sheet shows that it was then sent on to the chief of the CI staff. But a week later, on November 27th, 1968,
Right.
there's this handwritten note on it that just says "for file."
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a small detail,
Yeah.
but it tells us where this document ended up.
Okay.
It was meant to be archived,
Okay.
filed away.
So it's also worth noting the document number,
Right.
which is 1128988.
Okay,
Keep that in mind because you're going to see it pop up again
Okay.
in the other documents,
got it.
which suggests that they're all part of the same file, or at least a related series of files.
Okay,
We also see a little note here about a FOIA review that happened in September 1976.
okay.
Now, FOIA, for those who might not know,
Yeah,
stands for the Freedom of Information Act,
right.
which allows the public to request access to government documents.
Of course.
So this little note tells us that this document was flagged for potential public release back then,
Interesting.
which is why we are able to talk about it today.
I see. Okay, so let's move on to the second document.
Let's do it.
This is another routing and record sheet. This one's dated November 26, 1968.
Okay.
So just a few days after the first one.
Right.
Part of the sender information is redacted.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we only see illegible 2823,
Okay.
and it's addressed to what looks like IP/AN.
Right.
Now, those are probably internal CIA designators.
Yeah. Yeah, like codes for specific offices or divisions.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Now, there's a really interesting handwritten comment on this one.
Oh, what's that?
It says, please assign XAAZ-number and clamps to 201-289248, parenthesis date 26-NOV-68.
Okay. So that's giving us a little peek behind the curtain
Right, yeah.
of how the CIA internally managed information, and kept things secure.
Yeah,
XAAZ was probably an internal tracking code and clamps.
okay.
In intelligence jargon, often refers to specific security restrictions or handling caveats
Okay.
that are applied to a document, so it shows that this piece of correspondence was being treated very carefully.
Very sensitive.
Sensitive indeed.
Yeah. And the subject line on this routing sheet is pretty revealing.
What does it say?
It says, op correspondence between CIA and ASIO, period. Read re-release of information by Warren Commission.
Okay, so break that down for me.
Okay, op correspondence probably means operational correspondence.
Okay.
So communications related to intelligence activities.
Right.
Read, I'm not really sure about.
Yeah.
But the main message is that this document is about communication between the CIA and ASIO,
Okay.
specifically about releasing information from the Warren Commission.
So they're talking about what to make public.
Exactly.
Right.
And we see that same document number again, 1128988.
There it is.
And the FOIA review date, September 1976.
So definitely connected.
This routing sheet also shows that it was sent around to various CIA components,
Like who?
including IP/files and IP/RMS.
Okay, so IP/files would be their central filing system.
Probably, yeah.
And IP/RMS, I'm guessing, refers to records management services?
Yeah, so wider awareness within the agency about this. All right, so now for the third document.
Oh, this is the big one, right?
This is where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm ready.
This is a secret memorandum.
Ooh, capital S-E-C-R-E-T.
It's dated November 20, 1968, so the same day as the first routing sheet.
Okay.
And it's from the Deputy Director for Plans to the Director of Central Intelligence.
So high-level stuff.
The subject line is straight to the point. Letter for Director from Sir Charles Spry, parenthesis, ASIO.
Makes sense.
So the first paragraph is pretty standard, mentioning that there's a sealed letter attached from Sir Charles Spry.
Right.
It also notes that Spry sent a copy of this letter to the Chief of Station in Melbourne,
Okay.
along with a suggested reply.
So they're working closely together.
Exactly, real collaboration going on.
I see.
Now, the second paragraph,
Okay.
this is where things get really interesting.
What does it say?
So Charles Spry recommends that they don't declassify a specific Warren Commission document.
Okay.
That's called CD 971.
CD 971. Got it.
CD stands for Commission Document, and 971 is its number within the Warren Commission's records.
Okay.
Now, here's the really important part. The memo says that CD 971
Yeah.
refers to our investigation of anonymous telephone calls to the Canberra Embassy before and after the assassination of President Kennedy.
Wow. So now we have a direct connection between the JFK assassination investigation
Right.
and potential intelligence gathered by ASIO about these anonymous calls
Yeah.
made to the U.S. Embassy in Australia.
It's wild.
The fact that the Director General of Australian Intelligence is advising against releasing this document
I know.
5 years after the assassination and the Warren report immediately raises some big questions, like what could be in those calls
Exactly.
that would warrant such secrecy so many years later?
Good question.
What could be so sensitive?
Right, and the third paragraph of this memo says that the Deputy Director for Plans agrees with Sir Charles Spry
Okay.
about keeping CD 971 classified.
So they're both on the same page about this.
Yeah, total agreement at a high level in both ASIO and the CIA
Wow.
that this information needed to stay hidden.
Interesting.
We see that same document number again, 1128988,
Mm-hmm.
and it says that the memo came from the Far East Division.
Right, which connects it back to that first routing sheet.
Exactly. Then there's a list of attachments.
Okay, what are...
Sir Charles Spry's original letter, the reply that they sent to him,
Okay.
a document called FADM 3636, which is specifically about declassifying CD 971,
Okay.
and a copy of CD 971 itself.
Wow, so they're really going back and forth on this.
It's a lot of paperwork for sure.
Yeah, paper trail.
And lastly, the distribution list for this memo shows that it was not only to the Director of Central Intelligence,
Yeah.
but also to the Deputy Director of Central Intelligence
Okay.
and all sorts of other CIA personnel.
So they're making sure everyone's in the loop.
Yeah, this was a big deal within the agency.
Definitely.
So what do you make of all of this?
Well, to put it simply for the listener, the main takeaway here is that in November 1968, both ASIO and the CIA agreed that this document,
Right.
Warren Commission document CD 971, which had details about those anonymous phone calls
Yes.
made to the U.S. Embassy in Canberra around the time of JFK's assassination, should stay classified top secret.
Yeah.
It's not just about any old document.
Right.
It's specifically about these calls.
Okay.
And that raises a lot of questions.
So many questions like, who were these anonymous callers?
Yeah.
What did they say?
Right. And why were they so worried about declassifying the investigation into these calls?
I know.
Years after the Warren Commission had finished its work.
It makes you think that maybe these calls hinted at something
Yeah.
about the assassination that wasn't fully investigated.
Or at least not publicly revealed.
Right, exactly.
It's fascinating how these boring bureaucratic documents,
I know, right?
these memos and routing slips can actually shed light on a potentially important part
I know.
of a major historical event. Even decades later, these
Yeah.
glimpses into the inner workings of intelligence agencies can give us new perspectives and make us rethink what we thought we knew.
Totally. And it really shows how valuable it is to dig into these primary sources.
Yeah.
To get to see what these people were thinking and what
Right.
they were worried about at the time.
You get their perspective.
Which might be completely different from how these events are described in history books.
Absolutely. And for you, the listener who wants to learn efficiently,
Right.
This deep dive gives you a focused look at a very specific part of the JFK assassination investigation.
Yeah.
We're giving you interesting details and raising questions
Right.
without overwhelming you with the massive amount of information that's out there
Exactly.
about this complex event.
So, to wrap things up,
Okay.
the big takeaway is that these anonymous calls to the Canberra embassy were still considered super sensitive,
Right.
even 5 years after the Warren Commission's report.
Yeah.
This shows that there are still so many unanswered questions about the assassination of President Kennedy.
Lots of mysteries.
Mysteries indeed.
So here's a final thought for you to ponder. All right.
Why would information about these anonymous phone calls made years earlier still be so sensitive?
Yeah.
For the intelligence agencies of two close allies like the U.S. and Australia in 1968.
Strange.
What could have been so important about these calls?
Right.
And what does it mean that they're still partly classified even today?
Yeah.
This should make us think critically about how we interpret history
Definitely.
and the layers of information that are out there.
It's like an onion.
Exactly. Layers and layers.
Well, that was quite a deep dive.
It was a deep one.
Until next time.
See you then.